It's a Thanksgiving edition of Locked On Royals, and Chance Liebau is going to join us to give us his Royals offseason thoughts. That's coming up next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Johnson. Can follow me and Chance Liebau, who's our Locked On Royals Postcast host, on Twitter. Very easy to find us. If you want daily Royals content there, get any updates, any moves they may make, Chance and I are the people to follow on that. If you want to listen to both of our podcasts, you can always check us out on wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. Well, Chance, let's really dive right into it. We only got 30 minutes. That's the length of all of these episodes, so I don't really want to leave anything untouched here. So the way this offseason has transpired, we have seen a couple of deals already. We saw Boston make the trade with Sonny Gray, or the Cardinals to get Sonny Gray a few days ago. Maybe that changes things up in the Royals' ability to get a Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu. But let's start it off with your number one target. Maybe this can be your favorite team to go and trade with, or an actual player that you have highlighted. Where are you at here on Thanksgiving Day in November?
Well, I think if you were to go with anybody that the Royals have already mentioned, it'd probably be Jarren Duran. I think he absolutely changes everything that this team could be able to do. He provides that top-of-the-order threat. That's not just a guy that can go out and hit 280, but also give you some pop at the top of the order that the Royals were really missing until they picked up Mike Yastrzemski. I think Jarren Duran gives you that in spades and also gives you some really solid defense if you move into a corner outfield spot. But if I were to go kind of off the board, the one move, and I know you brought up the Sonny Gray move, the dominoes that could fall here, the one move that I was looking at, Jeff McNeil is a guy that could be similar to an Adam Frazier on steroids. I don't think he would cost you a Chris Bubic. I don't think he would cost you a Ryan Bergert or a Stephen Kolek, but he could cost you a guy in the 15 to 20 range in your prospects, because the Mets are currently, as it was kind of reported, they're kind of building up that cap space now, as you could say, with the luxury tax to go out and get a Kyle Tucker. And Jeff McNeil's making about $12.5 million this year. He's a free agent after this season. He played, over 200 innings in center field last year. He's played all three outfield spots for the Mets. He's a guy you could play everywhere across the board. You could hit him in the leadoff spot. You could hit him in the 6-hole. I think he is a guy that provides Matt Quatraro something that he really likes when he got Adam Frazier. And I think that he's always been talked about as a clubhouse guy. And I think that if you were looking for a cheap alternative option, kind of a setback option, I guess you could say, I think that a guy like Jeff McNeil could provide everything that Adam Frazier got you, and it wouldn't cost you a whole lot to go out there and get him, because the Mets are probably looking to shed salary right now.
Yeah, it's interesting to bring up McNeil, because we've had these collection of guys we've talked about over and over again, a Jarren Duran, a Wilyer Abreu, Brendan Donovan, Joe Adell. It was Taylor Ward at some point. But there is always a chance that somebody out of the blue is acquired. And I have no doubt in my mind J.J. Picollo is scouring all options. Really hadn't put McNeil near the top of my order here, but it really does make a lot of sense in a variety of ways. You bring up the cost, right? It's not going to be as expensive as a Brendan Donovan, probably not as expensive or really anywhere close to what Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu would be. And you factor in it's on the National League side, where you trade with the Angels, you trade with the Red Sox, they might have a higher asking price because they are actively competing against you for a playoff spot in 2026. Looking to maybe the pitching side of things here, because we know that the Royals have a bunch of starters. We know that it's likely one of those guys is going to get moved. They came out and said Cole Reagan's off the table, Lugo and Waka, they're not looking to move them. I think that's more about value than their willingness to trade him. So it brings you down to the four other starters in Noah Cameron, Chris Bubic, Ryan Bergert, and Stephen Kolek. Who is the one out of that bunch that you're saying, I feel that not only I'm all right with them moving on from this player, but you actually feel they could get some pretty good value in return?
I mean, I think Stephen Kolek's kind of the guy you look at in that situation, a guy that, the peripherals, and that's kind of what I love to look at is the peripherals. He's not a great, outstanding pitcher, but he really performed well at times last year in September. And I think that, one thing that a lot of the organizations that the Royals try and model themselves after, the Tampa Bay Rays being one of those, they always sell high. They sell when the stock is at its highest. And I think that's what you could do with a guy like Stephen Kolek. I think Ryan Bergert and Noah Cameron are two guys that I would have as off the table. Should not move them. I would listen to offers on Noah Cameron, although I do not want to trade him for anything less than what would be an absolute steal of a haul. But I think that a Stephen Kolek, who is on the older side of his plus 20s, I just think that he would be a guy I'd be more than willing to move on from if for the right price. And I think that it's going to be difficult to part with some of these guys, especially if you get into like the Royals did this last year. If you're into July and maybe even August and you're running out of guys on the farm that you can go to, I think that's where you would love to have a guy like Stephen Kolek. But I think, one of the things that I really like to watch in the postseason was, what are the Royals similar in to these teams that are in the postseason? Where are they not similar? And the one thing that all these teams have is just depth in the lineup. And we've talked about it so much this season in the last, 365 days. The Royals just need to extend that lineup a little bit more to make themselves a dangerous threat, not only in the Central, but in the American League as a whole.
Well, you look at this lineup, too. I mean, you have a Vinny Pasquantino, a Salvador Perez, Bobby Witt Jr., and Michael Garcia. That it was a good top four in this lineup. I've always felt, though, that if you want those guys to continue having success, you want them to build off what they did last year, they need more help in the lineup. We saw some of those guys really take off in the second half because they finally got more league average bats there. But to me, and we'll talk about one of these guys in the second segment, the ability of Carter Jensen and the ability of Jack Caglione is really going to direct where this offense goes. And I really believe that includes if they acquire a Jarren Duran, if they get a Joe Adell, if they get a Brendan Donovan, because though those guys can be a huge difference maker, if you can have Jack Caglione and Carter Jensen be a league average bat or better, now you're talking about an offense that can rank somewhere in the top 15 in all of baseball. So you look at those two guys, Chance, and we heard the Royals are trying to go after maybe a right-handed bat to complement Jack Caglione in right field. Does that sit well with you that they're looking for a platoon option for him, or are you a little bit let down that, man, for a guy that we were all in on last year, he's already needing a platoon in year two at the big league level?
I mean, I think that I would love to go out and get a platoon bat. I think that's what the Royals need. I think kind of looking around a little bit, I was looking at FanGraphs, their roster resource. There's not a whole lot of right-handed outfielders that are available. They're just all left-handed. So right-handed outfield hitting is becoming more of a premium nowadays, now that all of them are left-handed. But I think with Jack Caglione, I don't think you're disappointed that he needs a platoon guy, and especially when he's a left-handed bat. I mean, that platoon is probably maybe 30 to 40% of his would-be plate appearances would probably be against left-handed pitchers. And we've seen Matt Quatraro play the splits game, and I know it frustrates the heck out of a lot of fans. It sure frustrates me sometimes. But, looking around, and one guy that I brought up that I think would be a home run, Jacob Young for the Nationals, a guy that's 26 years old, an elite defender in the outfield. And the Nationals have 4 outfielders in front of him that I think that they would prefer to have, with James Wood, Dalen Lyle, Dylan Cruz, and I'm blanking on the fourth, I believe. Oh, Robert Hassell. All guys that were top 100 prospects that they really like. Jacob Young is about to be ARB eligible. He was an elite defender in center field last year, and I don't think he would be all that expensive for the Royals to go out and get. Now, it always takes 2 to tango. The Nationals are a team that could use some pitching. I think that a team that you could look to trade one of your premier starting pitchers for. I don't think Jacob Young, who would be a platoon 4th outfielder, would be all that expensive to go out and get.
Yeah, that's one I haven't thought of either. You look at a team like the Nationals already in sell mode. They're trying to move Mackenzie Gore this offseason. You can try to improve this team between the margins, right? I feel that every Royals fan wants that home run deal, right? I know you brought up that it'd be a home run type acquisition with Jacob Young, but, fans are waiting for that Jeff Passan tweet where it's really a blockbuster type deal. But the Royals also need to make those in between the margin type deals where the depth gets a heck of a lot better. You can have a platoon option for Kyle Isbell in center, a platoon option for Caglione. You can bring in guys that, can be those platoon heavy guys, or they can be everyday players. And that's what I thought the Royals severely lacked last season, where, okay, you don't want Kyle Isbell to face lefties. Well, then Tyler Tolbert's playing center field. And he had his moments, but Tyler Tolbert's not a 90 to 100 game a year guy, and he's never going to be. He's more of a pinch runner, and that's what I want to see the Royals really improve on, is raising the floor of this team. And I really do feel that this offseason, the hopes of Nick Lofton or John Rave or Tolbert, or we saw MJ Melendez get non-tendered, those days appear to be behind us, where they are going to look to significantly improve multiple areas in this team so that they can compete at the top half of the American League. Okay, let's take our first break of the show here. When we come back, I want to dive into Carter Jensen here, Rookie of the Year odds. Chance put out a very fascinating tweet a few days ago. Want him to go back over that, and we'll talk about his chances of maybe winning Rookie of the Year in 2026. That's coming up next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Chance Liebau of the Locked On Royals Postcast is joining us today, and we've still got plenty to get to in this episode. But before we do that, want to tell you a little bit more about FanDuel, the title sponsor of today's episode. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'm going to go to college football Saturday, Michigan, Ohio State. I'll take the under on that game. I know Michigan has been red hot in that series over the last few years. I just feel it's going to be a defensive battle in this one. So I'll go with the under on that total. Want to jump back over into our rookie talk here, Chance. And the tweet that you put out a few days ago was actually answering a question that was sent to both of us, but glad you had the numbers in front of you. And I thought you had a really good take on it. So let's keep it very simple here with Carter Jensen coming off a September where he hit 300, had the longest home run of the year for the Royals. You can really see the potential, and he's going to have, based off his service time, a shot to win Rookie of the Year in 2026. So if you are the betting man that I know you are you putting any money down on Carter Jensen winning Rookie of the Year? And if you are, it doesn't need to be right now. When would you maybe place that money on the Rookie of the Year odds?
Yeah, so I do a lot of our gambling stuff for the station that we work for. And a couple years ago, my best hit I've ever had was I hit Paul Skeens at 18-1 before he made his debut. It was a bet I placed in the middle of June. He hadn't made his debut yet, and he almost goes out and wins the Cy Young. And so my advice to people that would want to bet on the Rookie of the Year or the MVP, maybe MVP is a little bit different because those are more known commodities, but Rookie of the Year, it's really not decided until the thick of the season. I mean, you think last year, Nick Kurtz was hitting 241 in June before he just went off in the month of July and, carried the Athletics to a record that I'm sure they weren't proud of, but was a better season they probably expected. So I think that if you were going to bet on Carter Jensen or bet on anybody to win any award, especially in Major League Baseball, wait until you get maybe a month of games under your belt because, heck, a lot of us bet Jack Caglione to win the Rookie of the Year when he made his debut, and then he kind of came out and looked like a fish out of water for a little while. He kind of turned things on there at the end. I don't think he was as promised as the Royals fans would have hoped, but I think that with Carter Jensen, absolutely, he can come out and really make a difference for the Royals next season. He's going to have to be at the forefront of everybody's minds. He's going to have to play catcher a lot because if he doesn't catch, if he's more of a DH, that kind of hurts his wins above replacement. But if you look at the guy who won the National League Rookie of the Year this year is Drake Baldwin, who a lot of people wouldn't exactly know who that was if you're not really a diehard baseball fan. He had 274 with 19 homers, 80 RBIs, a fairly respectable season, 126 OPS plus. But, he's not a guy that really jumps off the page at you. He kind of got help because the National League was not overflowing with excellent rookies. Cade Horton was number 2. There wasn't really anybody else that you could see as a real shoe-in for what would have been a National League Rookie of the Year. So I think absolutely you could see a guy like Carter Jensen come out and make a name for himself. But Drake Baldwin wasn't even the starting catcher for the Braves until about May, and it took some injuries for that to be as it was. So I think with Carter Jensen, rookies are so volatile. They can go one way or another. I'd wait a little bit to see how he looks when he's got a month under his plate, but it also means he's got 80 or so at bats where pitchers can kind of see what his tendencies are and they can kind of get a feel for him, because everybody knows this offseason period, while you are working up, you're also doing some studying and doing some scouting on your own.
I thought it was interesting at the end of last season. We saw Carter Jensen leading off a few times. I mean, when there was a right-hander on the mound and he was going to be in the lineup that day, Matt Quatrero hit him leadoff, and that shows the type of expectation they have for him. And so before we know any big move that happens, right, we could sit here and speculate, well, if they get Jarren Duran, he could very well hit leadoff. Or if they acquire middle of the order bat, they'll want Michael to go back to leadoff. But do you believe there's a world where on opening day, Carter Jensen's in that lineup and he's hitting leadoff? Or do you see them maybe pulling the reins back a little bit and saying, hey, September was great, but Carter, you really have to prove to us early on in inconsistent playing time that we can't keep you out of the lineup? I've thought about it both ways of, do you see them easing him into it in 2026? Or is it, man, we think you're a stud and we need you in this lineup every single day?
I think the spot he'll be hitting on opening day is probably 5th or 7th. I don't think he'll be in the leadoff spot. I think the reason he was in the leadoff spot when he was up with the big league squad is because they wanted him getting as many at-bats as he could possibly get. Not only that, but like you said, against right-handed starting pitchers, they wanted to make sure he got 3 at-bats against a righty in a game and wasn't getting, in the 6th inning, they're pulling out and bringing in a lefty. So I would say he's probably hitting 5th or 7th. I think 5th, you're putting him behind Salvi, who's in the cleanup spot. I would have Michael, Bobby, and Vinny written into the lineup pretty much in pen early in the season as your top 3 guys. Maybe you have Salvi in the cleanup. Maybe you have Michael there if you go out, like you said, and get a Jarren Duran. But I think that more likely scenario is that he's hitting in the bottom middle of that order, where you want him backing up a guy like Salvi. You brought up in the first segment a guy like Salvi who got so hot down the stretch. That was because he had competent hitters behind him, one of them being Carter Jensen. When Salvi had guys like MJ Melendez and Drew Waters hitting behind him, pitchers were nibbling at the edge of the zone, and Salvi's not a guy that's going to really enjoy taking walks. So he was chasing all over the place. They had to pitch to him when they had a guy like Carter Jensen, or when Jack Caglione was hitting well. If you can put Carter Jensen in the 5-hole behind Salvi, or get a guy that can hit behind Salvi, that changes what this order can be. And I think that for Carter Jensen's sake, I think he's probably near the bottom middle of the order for opening day 2026.
With all of this expectation for Carter Jensen, Rookie of the Year odds, is this the offseason, in your opinion, that they can feel comfortable trading Blake Mitchell away to get one of those bats? Because I have this growing confidence that if they're going to get the bat they want, they could package a Chris Bubich and a Blake Mitchell, because I really feel that their asking price for Noah Cameron is going to be pretty high. I feel the same way about Ryan Bergert, even though his numbers toward the very tail end weren't that good. It feels that if you're going to move anybody in the starting rotation, Chris Bubich is the guy due to being a free agent at the end of this season. And Blake Mitchell might be that sweetener and a top 100 guy, and also some teams out there needing catching depth. So because of Carter, is this the offseason you go, all right, I know the numbers haven't been that great, but maybe that's as good as it gets for Blake Mitchell, and somebody out there is going to bank on him being their everyday catcher maybe 2 years down the road?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the thing the Royals need to do this offseason, because, what's the best case scenario? You have 2 left-handed catchers that can hit well, and they're both on the big league squad at the same time. I mean, that just doesn't work out very well organizationally. So I would definitely look to trade Blake Mitchell. His prospect ranking is pretty high on some outlets. I personally don't think he's like a A++ prospect. I wouldn't put him in the 65 to 70 grade on that major league scale from 20 to 80. But I think that his defense is what is going to attract some teams. His athleticism is what is going to be, his calling card. And he's one of those guys where if you're the Royals, I think you're comfortable trading him because you have seen what Carter Jensen can do. I've always been a process-oriented guy. I always talk about it on the postcast where it's like, was the process right and the results weren't? I think the process here, even if the results don't work out, if Carter Jensen hits 240 this year and Blake Mitchell goes out and he's a top 10 prospect somewhere else, the process was correct. You traded a guy that was a lottery ticket in Blake Mitchell when you drafted him. You built him up to be a top 50 prospect, and you capitalized on the investment you put in him, and you got a major league ready bat. And Carter Jensen, I think that he's your catcher of the future. He's going to need to improve defensively, I think. But I think that they are banking on Carter Jensen being their catcher for a long time, which leaves Blake Mitchell in kind of this void where he's kind of positionless. You don't want another MJ Melendez where he has to learn another position on the fly. You would like to see his value maximized on the open trade market.
Well, we've also seen Carter Jensen each and every level just get better and better. And that's, been a problem for Blake Mitchell. I mean, he had the broken hamate bone in spring training last year, so that set him back a little bit. But the strikeout number is still there, and that worries me when you're in
You don't want him to turn into Gavin Cross either.
Yeah, no, you don't want to wait too long. I mean, you got to the point with Gavin Cross where you didn't even need to protect him before the Rule 5 draft. And I'm not seeing a similar path for Blake Mitchell just because I feel that there is a pro bat in there, but potential's a dangerous word, Chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know it. I know it. We can talk about hypotheticals all the live long day of, if he cuts down the swing and miss, if he taps into power, he can be great. Well, yeah, that's kind of the case for any prospect in baseball. If they eliminate their weakness, they'll be a good player. And for Blake Mitchell, he hasn't shown me enough in high A quad cities, and really even in stretches where he's gotten hot, you still have the strikeout numbers. And if you're doing that in high A, it's only going to get worse for you in double A and then, further down the road. Maybe you could cut it back in triple A due to the talent you're facing. But if you're striking out at this rate in high A, you're certainly going to be striking out a lot at the big league level, as we saw with Jack Caglione in 2025. Let's take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll go over some final offseason thoughts with Chance to wrap up this Thanksgiving episode of Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Chance Liebau from the Locked On Royals Postcast joining us today on this Thanksgiving. And of course, as always, a happy Thanksgiving to you all listening. Thank you for your dedication and making us the #1 sports podcasting network in the country. Before our final segment, want to tell you about the second and final sponsor today in Gametime. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's incredibly frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply, so again, use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go download Gametime today. Wanted to get your thoughts, Chance, on the non-tenders that the Royals made. They non-tendered Taylor Clark. They non-tender MJ Melendez. Bailey Falter gets a tendered contract. Jonathan India was probably the headliner of that bunch. So of everything you saw on non-tender deadline day, any that stood out to you, any that you disagree with, I'll give you the floor on that.
I think Bailey Falter kind of stands out to me. I think that it mostly comes down to, we're going to at least see this through. We're going to pay to see the cards that we dealt when we picked him up. And I think that the Jonathan India contract is going to at least raise some eyebrows. It's going to get some attention. But, I mean, I just think that was the correct business move. I know that $8 billion is a lot for a Kansas City Royals organization, but I still think that it was the right decision to make. You don't want to go to arbitration and have all that. You don't want to go to arbitration. It's not fun. Contract negotiations aren't fun. You sure as heck don't want a mediator there to deal with this as well. So Taylor Clark was interesting. And I thought you brought up a great point today on ESPN Wichita when you said, you kind of learned your lesson with Sam Long. You can get another Taylor Clark on a minor league contract. You literally got Taylor Clark on a minor league contract. I think that while he was a great story and had his moments last year for the Royals, I mean, pitching in the 8th inning of some key games and just shutting it down, I think you can go out and find another Taylor Clark, or you can even bring him back on a minor league deal if somebody else doesn't pick him up. So I don't think there was anything too notable. Obviously, MJ Melendez comes to mind, but I think that was the right decision for all parties involved. And I, wish MJ Melendez the best. I think he's one of the better clubhouse guys for the Royals. We kind of talked about a little bit how his energy in the locker room and in a clubhouse in 2023 when they made that 2024 when they made that postseason run, how he was kind of that glue guy for the locker room, and it was missing at times this year until they brought it back Adam Frazier. While he didn't pan out on the field, maybe he pans it out somewhere else. I mean, it's going to break a lot of Royals fans' hearts, but I think that they did everything they could for MJ Melendez to help him turn into a decent Major League Baseball player, and it just never worked out. That doesn't mean it's not going to work out for him in his career, but he's one of those good guys that you cheer for, that you want the best for him going forward.
You do. And I've tried to say this before throughout the week, that if MJ Melendez catches on, folks, it wasn't that the Royals could never figure him out. Sometimes you get a fresh start. I mean, Ryan O'Hearn had brought up that with Baltimore, they changed his swing a little bit, and I do believe that helped him. I also believe the Royals tried a variety of ways to get the most out of him. Sometimes getting that fresh start is so refreshing to these guys. I mean, you think about it. When Ryan O'Hearn was with the Royals in 23 or 22, I believe it was, anytime he was in the lineup, social media blows up about how terrible he is and how sickening it is he's getting at bats. And then he goes to Baltimore, where Orioles fans have no idea about Ryan O'Hearn and the numbers he had in Kansas City, unless you were a diehard. So with MJ, he's going to go somewhere where, guess what? As the same thing we would do, Chance, and bringing up the baseball savant page and Fangraphs of, oh, he's got raw power. Oh, he's athletic. They'll do the same thing for him. And he might get a shot somewhere, but they're going to have to look in the mirror and look at those numbers that he posted last year, the year before that, and say, is it really worth a one-year deal for this guy? But I truthfully do wish nothing but the best for him. He was an incredible guy to talk to. It was very easy to see how well-liked he was in the clubhouse. But baseball is an unforgiving sport, man. I mean, you can work really hard. You can be a great guy. It doesn't always translate to being a great baseball player for one team. Final thoughts from you here, Chance, because we have the Rule 5 draft coming up. We've got the winter meetings coming up. If you had to make a few predictions here, I'll throw 5 questions at you here, and you can answer them as long-winded as you want to, as short as you want to, completely up to you. But what is the next move they make? This can be a free agent deal. This can be a trade. This can be releasing somebody. Just it has to be notable for sure. I know nobody's going to care if we're talking about AA guys that are getting released. But if you have one move that's on your mind, when do you see it happening, and who's going to be involved in it?
I'd say we get something, right before the winter meetings, just to at least set things in motion for JJ to maybe go out and trade for an outfielder, to trade Chris Buich or one of the starting pitchers. I think there will be a move made that kind of sets the foundation. It gets the wheels turning a little bit, at least gives them a baseline expectation for what this season could be. I think it's probably going to be a platoon outfielder, maybe in the free agent market, but I'm not exactly sure what exactly that'll look like. I don't have anybody in mind. I don't have any sources or anything, but I would imagine they get a free agent of some kind to at least set the wheels in motion.
Okay, second one here. Picking between Carter Jensen and Jack Caglione, who has a better 2026?
I think it's Jack Caglione, and I think it's with a bullet. I really think that Jack is going to have a much better season next season than this year. I know there are a lot of doubters and skeptics out there about him, but man, he just looks really, really comfortable, at least in September when he came up. And I think that if they add pieces around him and there's a spring training where all eyes aren't on Cags and where there are some more pieces around him, that I just felt like there was so much pressure on him this last year to succeed. Now, a lot of that was because he's the best prospect they've had since Bobby Witt Jr. and the best raw power they've ever had. And a lot of it was because the Royals needed him to be what they wanted him to be. I mean, they needed so much out of him. I don't think that's going to be the case next year. They need him to be a league average bat or maybe even a little bit more. If they can get that out of him, I think that, or if he goes into the season with that expectation, I think the sky's the limit for Cags.
Number 3 on this one, does Jonathan India bounce back in 2026?
I do think he will bounce back, but I don't think it's for the Royals. I think he might be a guy that they go out and trade. I think that he is a guy that maybe they go out and trade for like some bullpen depth or maybe another outfielder. But I do think that because they tendered a contract to him, I think that leads me to believe that he will be traded or at least won't be on the team next year. I think it allows them more flexibility with his contract going into the offseason. They don't have to worry about an arbitration hearing. I think that the Royals could look to trade Jonathan India because, Michael Massey, don't look now, but he played really well down the stretch. And if you bring in another infielder, like I brought up, a Jeff McNeil, there's going to be a lot of cooks in that kitchen at second base. So I think Jonathan India could be a guy they look to deal.
All right, number 4 on this list, who gets an extension first? Or you can also say neither of these guys get an extension this offseason. Will it be Maikel Garcia or will it be Vinny Pasquantino?
I think it's Vinny. I think Vinny gets the extension first. I don't think it's going to be as long as Royals fans want it to be, but I think it's going to be more affordable because Vinny doesn't play as premium of a position. I think that Vinny is a guy that would take a hometown discount. Not saying Maikel wouldn't, but I feel like Vinny loves it in Kansas City. And I know there are Red Sox fans that think Vinny's going to Boston for Jarren Duran. I think it's a funny hypothetical. It's not going to happen. I think that Vinny's going to be a Royal. I'd say 5 years, $70 million would be a good deal for Vinny. I think Michael, if you're wanting to extend him, you're looking more into the 7-8 year range if you wanted to extend him, because he is so young and he plays such a premium position.
And lastly, if they're to make one surprise trade, so this can't be, well, they acquire an outfielder, one move that you're throwing out there, it doesn't mean that you have any inside sources or you're putting your name on it. Just one move that nobody's talking about that you'd like to throw out there is, I could see why it makes sense.
I was looking today, and we always talk about where there's crumbs, there's usually bread at the end. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Remember last year when the Cardinals and Royals were talking about a Nolan Arenado trade?
Oh,
I think that Nolan Arenado, while he does have that long contract, or not long contract, but he does a long list of teams on a no trade clause. The Royals do like how Michael Garcia is fairly flexible. The Royals do love some defense at the hot corner. It's fairly affordable to go get a Nolan Arenado. He's only making, I pulled it up, he's making 16 this year, 15 next year, 2 years left on his deal. That would be a right-handed bat. You could add some pop into the lineup that you really haven't had. The Cardinals already made a move today, kind of signaling that they are trading and looking to sell off some pieces. And he's blocking one of their two top prospects in the last couple of years in Nolan Gorman and in Jordan Walker. It wouldn't surprise me if the Royals revisited a Nolan Arenado trade, because I think that it fits all parties involved, and it allows Michael Garcia to play a position that he could be very elite at second base.
All right. Good stuff, Chance. Always love having you on the podcast, and you enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you do the same, Jack. Thanks for having me on.
All right. That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. That's been Chance Liebau, the host of the Locked On Royals Postcast. Follow him on Twitter at Chance Liebau. That's Liebau. And thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, it'll be a Mailbag Friday, so be sure to get your questions in. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.